Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Bridging the Gap to Connections with Darla Williams. And today's feature is Paul Zohav. Today, we're talking with someone who has 30 years of experience in counsel. Let me go ahead and read to you a little bit about Paul before we get started here. Paul Zohav, he is a marriage and communication expert. He's with a master's degree in counseling from the University of Virginia. Paul is academically skilled, professionally experienced, and passionate. Today, with a well over 30 years of professional experience as a chaplain and domestic violence counselor, he devotes himself to supporting couples, families, through marriage and communication coaching in Tucson, Arizona. Welcome, Paul. Thank you for coming on to Bridging the Gap to Connections.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I enjoy this.
So I want to go ahead and start with you going ahead and with the audience, just go ahead and tell the people a little bit about you.
Well, you could say my journey started after I got that degree in counseling and education from the University of Virginia. I first served at-risk youth. Had a job, my first job, Waynesboro, Virginia. And I quickly learned that they're at risk for a real reason. One couple, his parents worked on opposite shifts for the DuPont factory. So Dad was there at night, Mom was there during the day. He comes home from school to take care of his siblings, and let alone to succeed in school. So he was at risk for a very good reason. And while I was serving these young people, I noticed that there was a lot of domestic violence and abuse. They had a hard enough surviving their parents, let alone thriving in school. And in those years, and we're talking about the early 1990s, the police wouldn't enter your home unless they just wouldn't do it, because the man's house was his castle. And the victim was obliged to press charges if there was charges to be pressed. And of course, since they're dependent on their spouse, that was very confronting. That since has changed, at least in the state of Virginia. But now the police will enter your home if they see evidence of domestic violence and abuse. So that's a really big change. And it is the community that presses charges, not the victim. I'm not sure this is showed up everywhere, but it is a good step in the right direction, taking the victim off the hot seat. And in that environment of the 1990s, I realized there were no resources for the perpetrators of domestic violence, supposing they got into court and out of court. That was not guaranteed. So I said, I'll offer classes for perpetrators of domestic violence. And for about 2 years, I did that. Both in Waynesboro and in Charlottesville, Virginia. And I made some inroads in some people's lives. And at some point I realized, how about I prevent it rather than treat it after the damage is done? Wouldn't that make sense?
Absolutely.
And over the next 20, 30 years, I've always been looking for what, if present, would make the difference. A little bit of insight I received. I spoke to the male perpetrators of domestic violence and abuse in my classroom. I said, listen, this is not a DV class. This is the best relationship on the planet class. And their listening shifted. They're no longer there by obligation. They saw coming back as an opportunity. And that made the difference. Opportunity.
That is a beautiful difference right there. What you're saying right there really does open the ideas for others to see a difference in the way that they're being approached. That's beautiful.
Many years later, and part of the curriculum I offer the couples who come to me is related to that. There's a lot to be connected. I say, listen, most of us tend to live lives of I have to, I need to, I should, and I must, I've got to, and I ought to. Um, it's out there, and we use these words around ourselves. Democrats need to, Republicans have to. As a nation, we should. The president ought to. You know, uh, we hear these words. I want you to begin to notice these words because if you listen for them, they'll stick out everywhere.
They do.
Um, and we notice when we can listen, we might hear, or else. I have to, or else. The Republicans must, or else. As a nation, we should, or else. I have to go to work, or else. I need to go shopping, or else. We rarely say the or else, but it's built into that place. So we can understand that when you're living an or else life, you are not free. You're not, because everything you do from the moment you get up is because you have to. Need to, should, must. So life is given by obligations and circumstances and not given by you. It's kind of depressing to think of it that way, but the way out is really simple. When you swap a vowel, an O for an E, instantly you go to a get to life. Just vowels, two vowels. You get to go to work. You get to go shopping. You get to. In a get to world, you are free. You get to change your mind with no consequences because there's not an or else. You get to go to work because if you have to go to work, 10% of you or more is at a beach somewhere fishing, so you're not really fully at work. And your performance and productivity can be measured if you go to work as a have to. I have to. Or go shopping. Need to go shopping. We got to get going. We have to meet the school bus. Get the flavor of this? With an O and an E, you go from, well, slavery to freedom. And many of us live lives given by what we have to do, ought to, should, must today. So, and in my work with the couples I currently see, some teenager says, do I have to do my homework? Which is pretty frequently for some of us. And the parents from now on get to say, no, you do not need to do your homework. And the teenager goes, what? If you have to do your homework, it just takes longer. You do the minimum amount to fulfill your assignment. You learn less. And if you're lucky, you get C's and D's. If, however, beloved child, you get to do your homework, you'll get to it sooner. It'll be over sooner. You will learn more, and then you'll get more A's and B's. So there's nothing in our entire house. We get to empty the dishwasher. We get to clear the dinners. We get to go to work to make the money to pay our bills. We get to. And a life given by opportunity is rather distinct from a life given by obligations and circumstances. It's a difference between freedom or not being free. And in the moment I spoke to those perpetrators of domestic violence, their life shifted. They were not there as a punishment. I mean, yeah, the court probably ordered them to get domestic violence training. But they came back because of the opportunity what I offered was. And this is an opportunity we have every day of our lives with you and your children, you and your spouses or partners. And someone says, we got to get going. And your job is nothing. Got to? With a rising inflection. And we get to go going. And all of life shifts. Oh, I need to go. We have to go to work. Have to? I get to go to work. Either way, you get to work. Either day you spend 8 hours doing whatever it is you do. But you can live at work as a have to or as a get to. Really, not much more complicated than two vowels. And there's many, many other distinctions I will be happy to share, but maybe you have some questions.
I do have a question on that one. In regards to thinking about the way we format words for ourselves. When you are looking at the difference between the O and the E, like you said, you're talking about the simplicity of using just a simple vowel and what it does to our mind. allowing us to, one, engage
Mhm.
instead of retract. I
Right.
love the way that the brain actually felt when I heard you say that. I
Mhm.
could feel the difference even in myself going, ooh,
Yeah.
I get too
In a
aversive.
nanosecond, you have a paradigm shift, and all it was two freaking vowels, you know. And my favorite toy these days is and. Most people think of and as peanut butter and jelly, dogs and cats, brothers and sisters, as connecting thoughts and objects, which it does. It is a connector. But what excites me, it just keeps on exciting me, is the opportunity of, and I have a flat tire, and I'm feeling stuck today, and I've been feeling kind of depressed lately, and with a rising inflection. That and connects us to next, our future, which is a creation of ourselves. Anything after the and is next. And it's a three-letter word. It's a little funny, paradoxical, So maybe your teenager comes to you. I'm having a hard time in school. And what do you need from me? You know, and tell me more.
So
It's
as a writer with the
Mhm.
semicolon, your and
Mm.
really works as the semicolon. Your story continues. Even though there's a circumstance and a situation, I'm
No,
hearing that you
you're
have
not limited. You're
yourself and
not
others.
limited to your circumstances longer than it's take to say, and got up on the wrong side of the bed this morning, and I'll eat a good breakfast. You know, I'm not feeling well today, and I'll call in sick. And as parents, when we have children, they want what they want. If you remember, when you were a child, you wanted what you wanted. And I still did. And so here, 75 years later, I still want what I want. So we can take it for given that we want what we want. And as parents, the, our path is that when our child comes up to me and says, "Oh, I really want this really expensive thing. Everybody has them." You get to go, and I'm listening, just like that. When we react to our children, we lose data. They don't feel heard. They feel disrespected. Our relationship sinks. But when we go, "I really want this thing," you go, and I'm listening. Tell me about that. And they will then proceed to inform us of all of the reasons why we should agree with their wishes and desires. And that's fine. They get to be heard. They get to know that we're listening, that we care. And we may actually learn something about what they want. It may not be the Xbox. It may be because all their friends have them and they want friends. The real deal is the Xbox is a solution to their problem. And unless we listen to them, we don't understand what's really going on. And, or
Would
perhaps it
you
work.
I have a question there. Would
Go ahead.
you say, in regards to that Xbox or that PlayStation or whatever system that the childrens are looking to, or would you say that that is a form of addiction for them to escape their reality so that they are not, because they don't feel heard, and why there's so many issues in regards to having that?
Well, I wouldn't jump full blow to addiction. People don't like suffering. It's like, you know, and they'll often go to the closest proximate cause as the explanation for why they're feeling poorly. There's a longer conversation here, but we tend to look to blame outside of ourselves. It's because I haven't got an Xbox. It's because people don't like me. It's because no one cares what I want. So we are always interpreting reality. Maybe I'll take a step back. Living has no language. Birds don't sing, waves don't crash, and trees don't fall. Those are words that we have invented to describe our experience of being alive. Human beings have language, Trees don't, at least not in a common sense of them. So if we understand that everything is an interpretation, then we can choose an interpretation that leaves us with more life. You can be confident that your parents are critical and judgmental, or you can be they're careful and deliberate. Different words, different life. If we're talking like we are right now, inevitably we are talking about interpretations, which, to loop into an area of communication, is why we need the word seems. People tend to speak declaratively, as if everything, and it sounds like it's the truth to the people who are listening to us. And when we're listening to us, we get to be responsible for that. Anyone with whom we are speaking, that, by the way, is you. In our minds, we are going, is it good? Is it bad? Is it right? Is it wrong? Do I agree or do I disagree? And if what I say to Darla doesn't meet what she believes, intends, remembers, or deserves, or whatever, we will stop listening and we'll start arguing about truth, whose truth is truer, whose reality is most real, and who's right and is wrong. Because it sounds like the truth, which then turns on our truth app. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it right? Is it wrong? Do I agree or disagree? And then we get distracted into arguing about something was really just an opinion or a thought. So that we need the word seems. Seems to me we bring up the past over and over again. Seems to me we tend to fall into argument whenever we try to talk about a seems will get you, yes, let's talk about it. Where a truth will get us a no, a but, and an argument. Seems our second best friend after yeses and ands, which I'll get to shortly. Seems to me will get us to discussion. A truth leaves us vulnerable to competing realities. What a waste. Just go, well, it seems to me this is something for us to sit down and talk about. When's a good time? Themes, one of our best friends forever.
So we're in this sea of words, and you sent me a little piece on something that you wrote about in regards to peer pressure and the word yes. I would love for you to unpack that, where you can use yes.
Oh, okay.
You mean no.
Was about how to say no by saying yes. That's the bottom line. Our teenagers are intelligent, but they don't have judgment. We get to live longer to get judgment. It's accumulation of life experience. You can't learn it on TV or social media. You don't get judgment by observing or watching some of the awful TV that's out there. It's it's not very useful. So they have a dilemma. They want to be popular. They want to belong. They want to be in love, and their body's saying, "Be in love." And their friend, and they want to be popular, and their friend comes up with a 16-year-old idea. As since they are 16, it's likely to be one of those. And they'll say, "Oh, let's do this. It's going to be so much fun." And your teenager knows that they'd rather not do that. It's not for them. And they're afraid to lose the relationship because they want to be popular, belong, and be in love. So what I want to bring this into the high schools, for instance. So the panacea, the first aid in those situations is saying, yes, I hear you. It has some attraction to me, and I would rather do something else. Yes, establishes the connection. Yes, I hear you means I heard what you said. You don't have to explain or repeat yourself. Yes, I hear you. And I'd rather not do that. Let's pick something else to do. And then the teenagers can steer their lives in a safe direction. There's when you exchange a piece of yourself for the prospect of a relationship, which as a teenager you want really badly. When you give up a piece of yourself, you spring a leak. You become vulnerable in years to come when some other possibility shows up. Oh, I really want that hot guy with abs in a car. Sorry, don't want to be disrespectful, but you're 23 or 4 years old and you run into this, oh, I want that. And then you might be vulnerable to exchanging something that's good for you for something that's bad for you. It's the damage is enormous when you start trading yourself for things like that. And you start with, yes, let's do that. And while you know that's not something you want to do. Um, One of the memories I have when I was a substitute teacher in a Nelson County, Virginia high school. And I encouraged the girls in the class, you don't have to accept abuse from your boyfriend. And they looked right back at me. But Mr. Z, if I don't accept abuse, I don't have a boyfriend. It's so that in order, so accepting abuse is saying yes when they really want to say no. And they want honor and respect. They want connection badly when you're 16 years old. And when you have a yes and an and a seems, we haven't talked about yes and yet much, but it's when you have, seems to me I'd rather do something else. After I've affirmed and accepted and received your invitation to do this something which I know is dangerous, and my parents wouldn't agree to it anyways. Yes, and seems. And I suspect, well, we're talking about safety because teenagers, listen, we say that teenagers think they're going to live forever. We've heard that said commonly throughout our society. To be authentic, it means they can't imagine being dead. So they think it sounds to our adults as if they can live forever, but they really can't imagine. It's an abstract thinking that they have not got access to. You can teach them how to avoid pregnancies, but you can't teach them to feel like they might get pregnant. You know what I'm talking about? It's the abstract thought of there's no way of putting it that teenagers have a very weak relationship between cause and effect. They're better at cause, not really present to the consequences of their choices. And as adults, that's why parents parent, because we know they don't know. When they're 14 years old, you say, you can't wear that because they have this, whatever you see on TV, crop tops and distressed jeans and pieces of their body showing where they ought not be showing. And they don't know how unsafe they are. They're just too young. They don't know cause and effect. You'll say, I mean, it's beautiful. It's a cute little outfit. Look how short those shorts are. And you say, but you can't wear that. Change your clothes. And they might say, why? Because it's not safe, says you as the parent. And they say, well, I'll be safe. We'll be all with all my friends at the mall. We'll all be safe. And you'll just take a breath as a parent. Listen, I will never, ever compromise your health and safety. Ever. Ever. Change your clothes. You may hate me for a week and I will accept that pay. I will accept that cost because I know something you don't. Change your clothes. And they may feel angry, upset, but you're doing your job as a parent, preserving the safety of their 14-year-old child or the 13-year-old child. And parenthetically, as a male, well, you're the mother, you handle it. Parents are a partnership. And we want to have a united front for raising our children to be safe at an age they cannot imagine how unsafe it is. And we can avoid much of this by getting to you when they're 10, 12 years old. Mom, I really want this. Mm-hmm. You go, yes, I'm listening. If you can start early on, you won't get to the 14-year-old conversation. It really is language, which I could expand on, but your turn.
What I like what you're doing here, though, is you're actually bringing the issues that are being experienced in such a palatable way, so it's just the story. it is what it is. As we're going through the experiences of life, I like how you are delivering your message.
Mhm.
Now, my question is how often, where there's like going to be people out there listening right now, they're in their relationship, and what you just said is the dynamic between the husband and the wife and the children, and you've
Mm.
got all three against one another, and you being the counselor that comes in to sit with this family.
Mm.
What could you speak into that family right now that would help them to open their mind to hearing that there is a way to healing this part of their life?
Well, beginning with the parents, I asked them to imagine a bubble, not a swirly bubble, but a bubble. Your marriage is a bubble. And that allows us to see where our boundaries lie. People have been using the word boundaries for quite some time, but as far as I can tell, they use the word boundaries when they're unhappy. You've crossed the boundaries or something like that. But when you can imagine your marriage as a bubble, then we can ask the question, does what I'm about to do or say belong in our bubble? Now that we can see our boundaries, we're inside, everything else is outside. If the answer is no, don't do it. If the answer is yes, with prior agreement of all parties, go ahead. We agree that this can be part of our lives. And if you're not sure, which happens, we now will learn the skills, which I teach them, how to work it out so that we figure out, does it belong in our bubble or not? Pros and cons, how do we want to handle that? Are there alternatives? So the bubble is an important image. And we get to look inside the bubble and what's inside. Well, we as individuals are in the bubble too, with our own personal boundaries. And the content of Paul's bubble or Darla's bubble are hobbies and pastimes, preferences, our history, stories, jokes. So in our personal bubble, there's content that reflects us. Things we like, things we don't like. Approaches to spirituality, approaches to finances. We all have our personal set of values. You have yours, I have mine. And if we only pay attention to the us bubble, we may suffer losses of ourselves. It is common that often it is she, sacrifices her well being for the sake of our us. And eventually, you run out of yourself. Sacrificing yourself for the sake of the family. Well, it's maybe a short term benefit, but it's a long term disaster strategy. And since we're talking about children, they're in the bubble too. Or your mother in law, if she's living with you. Anybody inside our home is inside our family bubble. And it is our job, our role as parents, to nurture the bubble of our children. They're young, thin walls. They're trying to figure out who the heck they are and who they're not. And our job is to make sure they get as much good stuff inside the bubble and avoid the bad stuff. Teach them how to say yes instead of saying no is part of we want them to learn, for instance. And if something unfortunate happens, we help them heal, restore the integrity of our child's bubble. Long term, as parents, we want them to have a clear sense of who they are and who they're not. So when somebody inappropriate knocks on their bubble, they'll say, yes, it's interesting, and I don't want to do that. That's a win for parents. We want them to we as parents want to train them, educate them so that they are safe as an adult. And it starts with, you know, does what I'm about to do. This friend I'm making in elementary school, you know, I like her, but she calls me names, for instance. Do I stay? Do I make a friendship with this young person or don't I? And as parents, our role is to help clarify themselves as they grow their bubble. Bubble's a very useful model. And inside, and we'll talk about it later, maybe how do we speak? What does communication sound like inside the bubble? For instance, yes, and that keeps us together. Seems keeps us connected and discussing. And all by itself is useful. How about we do this? I'm not sure I want to do that. And let's do something else. This is another subsect of what I teach my couples. We want to avoid always, every, never, and only, because that's going to turn off their listening and they'll start arguing with us. So for that, we need the word tends to. It seems to me we tend to will get us listening where it seems to me we always, you always, children always. Those are the things that we lose listening. And our interest is to have as much listening as available so we can spend it on communication. One more thing we want to be clear of, and one more is we want to avoid the word you. You is a problem, not you, the person, you, the word is the problem. As children, we learned you sit down and eat your dinner. You do your homework. You clean your room. You go to bed. You take out the garbage. We heard a lot of you-ishness growing up. And that's not necessarily a positive experience, shall we say. And so here we are as adults. Someone says, well, you always. Listening goes away. So we use the word yes, and seems to me one of us tends to. One of us is the workaround for the word you. Tends to is the workaround for the always, every, never, and only. And if we speak with yes, and seems, tends to, avoiding the words of you and always, ever, never, and only, we'll have a good shot at communication. Not perfect, but we've maximized the amount of listening available, least distracting. We've avoided the minefield of distraction. And after yes, and it seems to me that one of us tends to, we will tend to communicate. And that's the protocol bubble, shall we say, the communication understandings in our bubbles. We don't use the word no unless we have an and to follow. A no will set us back. A no with an and will keep us connected.
That's beautiful. That is actually very beautiful in the way that it is presented, but also in how it will actually keep the inner dynamics together and allowing people to feel that they're being heard by what they need, but also not feeling like they're going to be placed in that position of being loss of connection or the interaction of, keeping the relationship just because they have a different opinion. I love that. I love what you are wanting to bring out there to others to assist them in keeping the inner dynamics together and allowing people to grow their ability to communicate. And that brings me to something else. You and I had a personal discussion outside before coming into here. And you had shared with me one of the things that you learned that those who have come in to see you. And I loved what you said in that. And I want you to sort of just talk about this. And what you had said to me was that when those come into a meeting of one-on-one, they show up with less life, but leave with more life. And I want you to dive in.
They come because they have to, and they come back because they get to. That's my job. That they see working with me for all the 5 sessions typically as an opportunity to have the marriage they envisioned so many years ago. Or if they're premarital, the marriage they want going forward. It's something that you and I share is what I call return on life. People talk about return on investment, which works where it belongs. But what if we paid attention to the flip side of that coin? What is our return on life? ROL. And your commitment is that leave the people listening, thank you for being here, who are seeking an increased return on life and a reduced loss of life, experience of being alive. Insurance agents, planners, investors, bookkeepers, CPAs, what we all have in common is that we are purveyors of life. And to the degree that we succeed, people come to us. People will listen to this podcast, maybe many times. How about it? So all of us, maybe all of us, including parents and children, we're all interested in the experience of being alive. And that makes sense of everything. And my future challenge to corporations and enterprises is, okay, we have return on investment. We understand that. But what if we were to look at our employees, managers, stakeholders, and leadership? What if we were to introduce the concept of return on life? What is the return on life for our people who do the work for us, who fulfill our orders, wishes, and desires? Because if we know that if they bring their marriage to work, it gets expensive after a while. Productivity and performance sink. When our managers can't communicate with mutual honor and respect, and they spend more time in disputation than collaboration. And if the people who are the stakeholders, the leadership, the stockholders, are unable to communicate their vision for our corporation, our organization, it's a train wreck. I mean, corporations have died for less because they were not aware of the people who work for them. What if people saw your corporation as an opportunity to fulfill themselves, to be creative, to be self-expressed in the world? They would never be late, ever, because they'd be missing out on an opportunity. But if they're there for the paycheck, I don't know. That's how the corporation you'd like to have. So I'm introducing a new discourse, return on life. I even trademarked it. We'll see where it takes us. We're all in the dance.
With that being said, I want to ask a question. For those who are struggling in the workforce or even in their homes with someone hearing them and being it, like say you have one individual who's great at communications, but the other one doesn't seem, because you got an avoidant. How would you bridge that space in a dynamic at work or at home? You can choose either way.
Well, there's 2 or 3 answers to that, of course. For those who are aware of Big Bang Theory TV show, or people my age remember My Fair Lady, there are those of us who approach life analytically. I am one of those people. We like to know, why is this happening? How can I prevent it? How can I understand this piece of the world? And we're focused on analyze and figure it out. Notice I didn't use emotions in the whole sentence. How they feel is not a priority. They have feelings, but it doesn't help them figure it out. They just have feelings. And Sheldon in Big Bang Theory lives his life cognitively, intellectually, and logically, and he doesn't take his own feelings into account. Unless you give him Mr. Spock's DNA, then he kind of meltdown. Funny
That
episode.
is true.
So he's not ignoring Leonard's feelings because Leonard is a male feeler. He's not ignoring Penny's feelings because he doesn't relate. And part of the answer to your question is that thinkers often are attracted to feelers because they have some zest that the thinker kind of, oh yeah, there's something over there I'd like to have some of that. May have briefly. And so we marry a feeler. But feelers approach life with their emotions first, how they feel about that. And there is a tendency for thinkers to disrespect the feelings of the feelers. Why are you so upset? It's just words. It's a yes or no question. Why are you so upset? Says the thinker. And the feeler says, you don't care about me or my feelings, do you? And then a relationship starts to spring a leak. So one of the answers is that one person doesn't really prioritize feelings in the way they lead their lives. They want to live their life effectively, efficiently, but they're not really into the feeling end of it. Slight exaggeration, but not much. So one answer is personality disawareness. Another factor is people feel loved in slightly different ways. Gary Chapman is known for the book, The Five Love Languages. Gary Chapman, been around for a long time. And people don't feel loved in the same way. And people often make the mistake of loving them in your love language, but does not match up with theirs. You think you're loving them, like if you're acts of service, you say, you see how much I take care of? I make sure there's money in the end, there's food on the table, and there's dinner when dinner's on. Can't you see how much I care? And the other said, but I'm waiting to be here to play, quality time. I want to be appreciated for what I do. And that's a classic breakdown, by the way. So you think you're loving them, but it's not landing the way you intended, and you didn't know it. So you'll go to fivelovelanguages.com. Please read the book aloud together, taking turns. Minimum, take the quiz online, and you'll find out that you're out of sync in the way that your behaviors do not match. For example, my spouse is acts of service. She loves to teach. She's a supplementary school principal. She's on the board of the organization. And she shows love by taking care of. She shows love to me by doing the laundry. Really, lots of laundry. And now that I know that she is acts of service, and she says, let's change the sheets, which is far more frequently than I would change the sheets. There were times when I was younger, I go, another week, that's good. But it doesn't work for her. And I know it doesn't work for her. So she says, let's change the sheets. I say, yes, I'll be right there. I choose to love her in her love language. She experiences love by my acts of service, and we flourish. It could be as simple as that. You go to fivelovelanguages.com, take the quiz, read the book as much, has another powerful example. We educate one another on how to love each other. Parenthetically, this is where infidelity often shows, because they are busy loving you in their love language, but not yours. One couple, he says, there's something wrong with my wife. I don't remember that. And it turns out that he's so busy working that he ignores her invitations to play, quality time, to the point where she found someone else to play with, which then he noticed that. And then he calls me, something's wrong with my wife. So part of the homework from first to second session is to get very deeply aware of how you are loved and how they feel loved. And then you have a drop-down menu that leaves us loved. So that's another answer to your question. The third answer, well, we have love languages, we have personality types. We have damage left over from the time we were children. Damage is probably not the best word. When I was 5 years old, I understood beyond the shadow of a doubt that no one cares what I want. No one. So I stopped asking because I didn't expect. Why bother? They don't care. Someone else learned when she was 5 that, well, cheating is not just a matter of time. Her parents cheated. His parents cheated. Her brother's cheating on her sister-in-law. And so for her, well, just a matter of time. And so he, in this case, gets to walk on eggshells around her because he don't know what's going to set her off, because her radar is set on cheat. In the fourth session, we overwrite some old code. But one couple, she learned that she's not good enough. Never appreciated growing up. Her father never said he loved her. And so by the time she was an adult, she had a PhD, and I'm not good enough. There's something wrong with me. And she wakes up every day with that. It's like a bad radio station. Who did she marry? Someone who learned as a young man that when he's aware of the emotional needs of the people around him, it works. And so being aware of the emotional needs of people around you is married, I'm not good enough. And I said, that's who said I do the day of their wedding. There's a certain level of absurdity, but if you look at beneath the surface of your marriages, you'll find leftovers undistinguished from your earliest years. And I can go back to 2 years old. I don't want to keep on telling you more and more stories. I have lots of stories, but just be aware that there's distortions of perception. Yeah, that
Yeah.
you adopted when you're 5 or 10, or previous marriages. It could be your last marriage. Things your coping strategies that you learned to get along with that person before it got so bad you broke up your marriage. So we have a whole toolkit of really rusty tools. We get to throw them out.
I like that. I like how you
I
get
think
to
I
figure
answered your
that
question. I
out
think
and
I answered
start
your question.
something new.
Um, it's understandable. Oh, there's an article called "Mr. Rogers had a simple set of rules for talking to children." That's the name of the article. Please find it. Mr. Rogers had a simple set of rules for talking to children. It's a very short article, but when you understand that we get to speak into the intelligence and emotional maturity of the person you are with. For example, 5-year-old boy did whatever he did. And the father goes, "Why did you do that?" Poor kid had nothing to say because, one, he doesn't have a vocabulary large enough to answer the question. At age 5, you have maybe a 5 or 6,000 word vocabulary. He simply can't answer the father's question. Why did you do that? That's one of the things you might take away from that article. I mean, Mr. Rogers had a simple set of rules for talking. See, talk to the person at their level of development. You can't, you avoid speaking to them as an adult because they're not.
Exactly.
A lot more to be said about that, but that's an example. Speak to your child at the level of their understanding. A friend of mine had a 13-year-old who had a girlfriend. When she found out that he had a girlfriend, she started to freak out. Oh, curfews and behaviors and this, but he just wanted a girlfriend at age 13. What do you mean by girlfriend when you're 13? You want the kind of like enhanced friend. So as adults, we get to be aware of our stuff and the level of their cognitive, intellectual, and emotional level at their end. Why would you confuse a child?
Exactly.
They're not adults. Your turn.
You said my turn. Hey, I was enjoying listening to you because you really do have some great information for everyone to be listening to. I mean, they really do need to pipe in. And this point,
We get to.
yes, we get to. And I am going to work on this. I'm going to get a whole list of these words so I can go practice taking them out of my vocabulary if I
Mhm.
need to and want to.
The last
So I
thought.
want
I think
to.
we're close to an hour. I think we are, and
We usually
I
are.
could go on 2 or 3 more. Really, Martin Heidegger. The last thought I leave. A German philosopher of the last century, who was not a nice person, by the way, but he's famous for saying, "Language is the house of being." Language is the house of being, by which we can understand that the words we use frame our experience of being alive. You could live in a world where I'm ashamed. That's one house of being. Or a world which we are responsible. You could be, "I'm sorry. Can't you see how sorry I am?" Or you could apologize. You could live in a world where blame me, it's my fault. I'm guilty of that. Makes me nuts when I hear that, but or you could say, "I'm accountable. I'm responsible. I intend," as contrasted with, "I'll try." I'll try has very little relationship to results. In fact, I would say I try has no relationship to results. It may participate in an outcome, but it has no intentionality there. It doesn't offer us a path forward. I tried. I did the best I could. Which, well, I intend whatever happened, good, bad, or indifferent, belongs to me. I intended. I took the actions, made the choices that produced the results that may have been not what I was looking for. In that case, we can talk about it. Language is the house of being. One of the elements of the work I do with couples is they teach them how to apologize in a way that alters their future. That's usually third session. Sometimes they jump ahead when they're really upset in the first session. They started off there, but a full-blown apology alters the future. I'll make this up. Language is house of being. And you could say, there's too many people of Indian extraction in your neighborhood. You say, they're awful people. One Indian restaurant is quaint. Oh, let's try Indian food. We'll go over there. But when there's 10 of them, or in Dearborn, Michigan, there's a lot of Arab Muslim Americans restaurants, then we start feeling uncomfortable. We start calling them names, homos, dykes, N-word, Nazis, ITs, kikes. We tend to create a word that helps us challenge or answer our discomfort by dehumanizing the other. It's a longer conversation, but watch what you say. And we could say, crush the opposition, slash prices, beat them to the punch, rule of thumb. That produces a very different world than you and I would prefer to live in.
Exactly. And I know that there are so many toxic words that we use in our vocabulary and daily that keep us separated from the spaces in which we want to actually move to. And
when you don't understand what's going on, you call them a name. That's a short version to a longer conversation. But language is the house of being. If you're living, I'm guilty of that. It's my fault. Blame me. I suggest you move to I'm accountable. I am responsible, and I apologize. I plan and I intend. You might want to move to a different neighborhood, and you get a different life. Maybe I'll stop there. Please get my book. It makes a great wedding gift. Marriage and Communication Recipes for Life.
I'll definitely put all of his links in the video so that you can connect directly to Paul, so that you actually can have those meetings and get connected, familiar with his work, and actually dive into a book. I mean, the book has the Marriage and Communications, the Recipe for Life. And I love how we put that, the recipe for life. What an opportunity we have when we dive in and actually look, because how many times do we take a recipe of a cake and make a sweet dessert for all of us? And we get this opportunity that he's giving us those tools to make a sweet life.
You don't need to understand. There are no chapters to read, period. There are recipes to follow. A little bit of explanation, because I like that. But follow the directions, get your cake, only the cake is your life. Recipes for Life. And I'm available. What we did today literally could be done by Zoom. 5 sessions, an hour, hour and a half, or 2 hours, and wherever you are on the planet Earth, you'll be at the end of the first 2 hours, you'll see a path forward that was obscured, opaque. When you're ready, marriageandcommunication.com. I'm a yes.
Thank you so much, Paul, for today and meeting with me and bringing this together. I absolutely love what you're doing for the world. And I believe that many need to come and find you and what you're doing.
Well, yes and it seems would be a great curriculum for high school.
Definitely. And I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Bye for now until the next episode of Bridging the Gap to Connections. This is Darla Williams, and this was Paul Zohav. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Bye for now.
Absolutely.